Hello and welcome to the second event of the 2011-2012 State of the Rockies Speaker Series. We have a very exciting presentation for you tonight. We have both Justice Hobbs and Professor Lawrence McDonald here, ready to speak on the law of the Colorado River Basin. But before we get to that, we're going to give you our nice little spiel on State of the Rockies in an effort for you to join us throughout the rest of the year, continue coming to these events. Thus, the State of the Rockies project for 2011 and 2012 seeks to present information regarding the current issues in the basin, highlight the implications of changing climate as a variable to the current system, and incorporate perspective of future generations. One of the other aspects of this year's project that's different from the past is the inclusion of CC graduate Will Stauffer Norris as a Rockies field researcher. In the fall of this year, Will began paddling from source to sea, high in Wyoming's Wind River Range to the Mexican Delta. Will and his team departed just a few days ago and started their kayaking adventure on Wednesday. 3 days prior, they hiked into the Wind River Range and were able to provide us with these photos. We will also be hosting a spot GPS map of Will and his colleagues on their adventure. They'll be sending back daily coordinates, which we can post and follow on this map here. This, I believe, will also be available on the website. Will's trip is an excellent segue into our two speakers for the evening, Justice Gregory Hobbs and Professor Larry McDonald. With that, I turn the mic over to Gregory Hobbs.
Well, thank you very much for your invitation, and it was great to talk with some of the students here. Anyway, I wanted to start out tonight reading a poem about Colorado water, which I wrote for the anniversary of Colorado's in-stream flow program, its 30th year. Colorado was one of the first western states to actually have water rights for in-stream flow. And this poem is called Colorado, Mother of Rivers. When I was young, the water sang of being here before I am, of falling sweet and soft and slow to berry bog and high meadow, and held me in her lap and cooed the willow roots, the gaining pools, and called me through bright dappled grass, and called me, oh, my shining one, and shaped a bed to lay me on, and played the flute so high and clear, and shape the stones to carry me when I am young and full of fight, for roaring here and roaring there, for pouring torrents in the air. When I am young as mountain snow, in crag and cleft and cracked window, I call the greenback cutthroat trout. I call the nymph and hellgrammite. I call the hatch to catch a wind. I call upon the mountain track. I call the scarlet to the jaw as morning calls her own hatchlings. Call Yampa, White, the Rio Grande, San Juan, the Platte, the Arkansas. So that's our Colorado, Mother of Rivers. That's in the, thank you. That poem appears in the Citizen's Guide to Colorado's Interstate Compacts, published by the Colorado Foundation for Water Education, but we can only consume 1/3 of the water. And this is our water budget for the whole of this state because of these water compacts. The 9 interstate compacts apportioning water among the upstream state, Colorado, and the downstream states, and the Republic of Mexico under the 1944 treaty. So if you were to take a snapshot of our water consumption allowed under these interstate compacts, not only are we limited by what nature provides, we are legally limited by what we can consume. We can only consume 1/3 of the water that arises in Colorado and must pass 2/3 out of state. So what you see is what the state engineer calls the snake diagram. This is a hydrograph, and it is the mean flow, the average flow for the period of 1941 to 2001, and as you know, the peak of the hydrograph is the snowmelt. It mirrors the divide, doesn't it? Huh? The peak is the runoff, and then you see the averages during other times of the year. Now, in the year 2002 to 2003, that huge drought year, 16 million acre feet are actually the water supply that generally comes out of the snowpack and the tributary aquifers. It was only 4 million, not 16 million acre feet in that 1 year. And we delivered most of that out of state because of the compacts. We lived on our reservoir storage. We evacuated in that 1 year 6 million acre feet of live storage capacity to serve our cities and farms, bringing us within 500,000 acre feet of totally exhausting our live storage supply. So just like Joseph and the Pharaoh, we store water in times of plenty for the days of want, as you store grain in times of plenty for the times of want. In all communities, governance around the most precious water resource must occur in smart water conservation.
Terrific exercise, bringing together students and faculty and getting the kids out on the ground, having a look at some important real-world issues. Have a look at this thing called the Law of the River, which is a series of different kinds of laws that has developed over now almost 100 years, and that serve to guide the uses of water in the Colorado River Basin. The question that was really posed is whether that law, that series of laws, those pieces, can continue to be effective at leading us into the next 100 years. I think the challenge before us is substantial. We have reached a point in our uses of the water of the basin where the Bureau of Reclamation has now acknowledged that we are fully consuming every drop of water that the basin produces. We have already reached that point, and the question is, how do we then move ahead with the obviously continuing demands and needs and interests of all of the 7 states, the Republic of Mexico, the many Indian tribes that have reservations within this area, and all of the diverse interests we have in the water and the rivers, and how can we meet those different interests? That's an area called the Imperial Valley, which is right at the border with Mexico. It's an area of about 500,000 acres. It's a desert. It is a place in which there is virtually no rain. It's actually outside the basin. It is not physically within the hydrologic basin, but we have built a canal to carry water into that area. We irrigate those lands, and that irrigation in that particular area has the legal right to use 1/5 of all of the basin's water. So we have an enormous right existing in one place. About 40% of that water is used to grow alfalfa. You might wonder, is this a wise use of our water resources? Certainly I do. I think, that tells us that we don't really have a lot of time to just assume that this is not a problem, that, we'll deal with it when we need to. I think we need to start today. So certainly that is my hope and desire. I'm pleased that the project is underway, that we'll have a look at this issue and maybe will help to, bring more attention to the questions that I've been posing here tonight. Thank you very much.
So now we'll have Justice Hobbs and Professor McDonald come up for about 20 minutes and take some questions.
And I raised a couple questions. Number one,
The only pocket of water we have left is in certain good years on the west slope under our Colorado River Compact entitlement. And I want to underscore that word entitlement. Now, our ancestors bargained for this as a perpetual allocation for Colorado. We ought to decide how to use it. Now, in shortage times, we've got to work with the lower basin, and we don't want them calling us out. So desal, I think, is definitely part of it. Encouraging the lower basin to bank and store and trade water together.
Join us on November 7th for the next State of the Rockies Speaker Series event as we host a panel on the Colorado River Basin, environmental perspectives and action.